So my name's Emman. I'm a software engineer with Vevolution. And today we will be chatting to Paul Arnold, one of our sales gurus. Um, Paul, if you want to, don't know if you want to say any more about yourself.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on, and thank you everybody for attending. I suppose we've got 27 minutes from now to give a crash course in B2B sales. So we'll try to stay on point and to the point. I've been with Vevolution for 8 years, and I've been representing their sort of commercialization department, and I'm delighted to be on here today.
Excellent. So, as said, lovely to have you, and we're here to discuss B2B sales tactics. Before we deep dive into that, how did you end up in sales, Paul?
Yeah, so I graduated in IT, information technology from university, and I guess there were two really big learnings that I had from that. One was to do something that you're not very good at and find something that you are comfortable at. And so I moved into sales 5 years, 5 long years after doing IT as a programmer. I used to do what you did. And then I've been in this game now for the last 17 years, and I really enjoy it. It's had a lot of challenges, a lot of ups and downs over the years, but it's good fun.
Excellent. And the main topic is B2B. So, what does that actually mean in layman's terms for someone that's not actively involved in sales?
Sure. Yeah. So B2B stands for business to business. And there's really two main types of sales that you can do, particularly if you have a technical platform or a technical company. So B2B is business to business. And as an example, if I have a software product or a company, I can either choose to sell it into another business or I can sell it to customer, which is B2C. And each of those has their different nuances and challenges.
And why would you say B2B sales is important, or why have we chosen that as our subject for today?
Well, quite simply, if you've got a technical platform, usually you will want to either sell it into a big business because the big business has lots of customers or members themselves, and it's the easiest way to gain high numbers, which in turn turns into high revenue. If you were to sell one product into one company and they have 1 million members, straight away you could get 1 million sales. If you're doing B2C, it can be very difficult because you have to grab the land mass and you have to grab the customers one by one, which often takes millions of pounds worth of marketing. And you need to be really, really disruptive to succeed in that market.
So effectively, if you're looking at B2B, you have access to that business's captive audience or market rather than having to generate your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So it saves a lot of time, money, and effort into trying to acquire new customers. And a lot of the products that you build, Eamon, will be directly for B2B sales. So
Yep.
You can understand how important it is to try to give a product that's fit for purpose and does what the company wants it to do.
Absolutely. So when you're looking at B2B, are there any specific techniques that you use to sell to other businesses?
Yeah, sure. There's various, I suppose, techniques and methods that have been around for a long time. And I suppose, you got to find your own way if you're in sales about what works, what doesn't work. I use a particular technique called spin selling, which I've got a slide, if I may share my
Lovely.
screen. So spin is just a technique that you can use for selling, and each of the letters represents an action. S is for situation, P is for problem, I is for implication, and N is what the need is. And so if we were to look at perhaps a live example of spin selling, if we're trying to sell software into a healthcare company or a healthcare clinic, a live example, if I was on the phone to this clinic trying to sell them my software, I would use this technique to try to sell it in. So for the first one would be the S, which is the situation. I might term it as, what do you currently use? Do you use any software? What is it? And if they tell me what they use or what they don't use, if they do use it, it may be a competitor, which is great. I then say, okay, what's the problem? Does it ever fail? Does the software you're using ever fail? And 99 times out of 100, people will turn around and say, where do I start? Have you got all day? Because it doesn't do this and doesn't do that. And then, you ask them to talk further and more, and then you'll move in with, well, what's the impact of that? How does that impact you? What's the big deal? And quite often they'll say, well, it takes up time, it takes up effort, the reporting is wrong, we have to have a receptionist to manually fix the numbers at the end of the day. Okay, and then you'll say, right, so, what is it that you really need? Have you a need from this software? And quite often they will say, well, we need it to not do this, or we need it to do that. And at that point, then is a very good time for whoever the salesperson is to come in and say, well, have you considered looking at something like this? It could be right up your street. And so that's really how you go about spin selling.
Excellent. And within that, so you've got your guide of how to approach sales, and that's really useful. I often think that also we learn a lot from failures and mistakes and how to mitigate them as well. What's your approach to that? What are the problems that come up when selling, and then what do you do to effectively mitigate or minimize that?
Yeah, great question. So I've got one slide here again that will look at what I would say the top 10 biggest selling mistakes that I've carried out in my career, and I think a lot of other salespeople will as well. I won't go into each of these 10 mistakes. A lot of them really are common sense, but from an experienced salesperson, you'll be surprised at the amount of times you can put your foot in the wrong place, or say the wrong thing, or do the wrong thing, sometimes unintentionally, and that can just close the door completely in the sale. If you look at these ones, perhaps there's 3 or 4 that I would maybe highlight as the most important. Number 1 is the most important. There's a lot of evidence that says if you talk for about 60%, you're talking too much. So you really got to minimize that down. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you got to try to listen as much as you can when you're with a customer. People don't like being sold at. If you look at number 4, a lot of the time when people are interested in your product, you can have discussions, debates over price. I can't afford to pay this. It's too much. How will I afford it each month? And quite clearly, you need to get away from arguing or negotiating about the price and talking about what value it brings. How will this product, scratch your itch? How will it save time? How will it make your life easier? How will it take away all the pain points? So that's a really big lesson I've learned over the years. Another important lesson is number 7, not being ready or prepared to overcome objections, which can also be comparable to not being able to sell against your competitors. You're not going to be the only sheriff in town with a product that will change people's lives, and you're going to have a lot of competition. And if you don't have a lot of competition, it may mean that there's not really much of a market in your product. So really, it's important to be ready and to be comfortable with having these objections, and to enjoy them as well. Because if you're prepared and that your product, you believe in it and it will be good for them, then there can be an enjoyable aspect of trying to talk to the customer and help them understand that the product you have can really make a difference. And then if we maybe bring back down to another big error that often happens in selling is number 9, which again sounds very obvious, but particularly in this day and age when people are so very busy, quite often you can move from day to day, week to week with different priorities and different issues and problems that are in your life as well as the customer's life. So whenever you're online with the customer, you have to have done your homework. You have to be prepared with what their pain points are and try to help them understand that you can understand what their problems are and really dig into that understanding. And that's all about preparation. You cannot just come online and wing it, so to speak, which is a lot of what salespersons used to do. Another point, if I may add, just at the bottom,
Sure,
I
of
give
course.
a bonus tip, Emman. various people can say, oh, well, this salesperson, they can sell ice to the Eskimo. They're so good at selling. Um, that's without a shadow of a doubt, probably one of the biggest errors you can do, because quite simply, you don't want to sell ice to an Eskimo. There's no point in going in and doing a one-hit wonder. Um, real money comes from repeat sales. So if you've got particularly the technical product or a platform, you're not going to make your money by a one-off deal. You're going to get it from monthly recurring revenue or annual or quarterly or however you want to slice up the pie. And that's quite simply delivering a product that will, function as the customer wants and, take away all their headaches. So the Eskimo will be covered in snow. They don't need any more snow.
I remember when we've been talking about these kind of things before, Paul. You tend to talk about qualification and the fact that qualifying a sales target is really important. Could you explain a bit more about that? What qualification is and what your approach to qualifying a target is?
Yeah. So the biggest asset any salesperson has is their time. Who do they choose to spend their time, stroke waste their time selling to end clients? And you've really got to be ruthless in how you spend your time as a salesperson. And to help you do that, because nobody has all the answers, to help you do that, you need to qualify. You have to qualify your end target clients. Um, and there are techniques to that. But qualification is one of the most important things that you can have as a salesperson.
Do you have an example of the technique or approach you use for qualifying a target?
Yeah, I do. I'll just come into that. I've got a slide here.
Lovely.
So can you see this slide here?
We can indeed, yeah.
Okay, great. So there again, like SPIN selling, which stands for situation, problem, implication, and need, there's another technique that you can use to qualify, which is proven and tested over the years. And again, it's very simple to implement and use in real life. And it's called BANT, which stands for B-A-N-T. B is for budget, A is for authority, N is for need, and T is for timeline. So if, for example, I was trying to sell you, Emman, some of my software and you work in a healthcare clinic, as an example, if I've sold you the product and you're thinking, Paul, this healthcare technology platform is great. I think this is exactly what we need. Some salespeople will be like, yippee, we've got ourselves a deal. Let's go off and get the contract signed. But what an experienced salesperson will do is, once in essence they have created a need for the product, they will then confirm a few key steps with this person. So the first one I would then ask, I would say, great, Emman, that's wonderful that you like our product. Um, getting down to the numbers, it'll cost around X amount per month. Do you have budget for that? Which can often drop jaws and quickly terminate any sort of sale, which is fine. If there's any negotiation to be done, okay, great. But you need to find out if they're in a position to buy your product. The second thing is, if you've addressed that and you say, yes, Paul, yes, we actually do have £1,000 set aside because it's going to save us so much time and add so much value. Yep, we can pay for that. Great, Emman. Are you the person that writes these checks? Oh, well, actually, that's our FD you want to be speaking to. Okay, how do you find or communicate with this person? And they could say, well, they spend 6 months in Barbados. They're a nightmare to get a hold of. You try to understand who has the authority to make sign-offs. And it's not always just one person. It can be more than one people. Third point, again, getting back to the need. And I know you may have thought that you've done most of the homework and you've sorted the deal. But if they have the money and if they know who's going to sign it off, it does no harm to then recount your steps and say, right, so just to confirm, you need this product. Are you in agreement that you need it to do X, Y, and Z? It will fix A, B, and C. So it's important to go over that. And then finally, timeline, and that's from an internal and external perspective. When do they want to purchase this product? Because that might not be in their plan until next year. Or when can you, as a sales or as a development company, deliver the product? Which, if you've got a roadmap of so many different softwares that needs to be built, maybe you cannot deliver it for 6 months. Therefore, it's crucially important that you have an agreement and an understanding on a correct timeline. So if you go through those 4 steps, BANT, then you will very quickly and easily be able to qualify well.
It's interesting to see the parallels in that both Spin and BANT focus on need, which rather than a sort of repeating a task, it feels like similar to how we approach software development, in that we talk about getting married to the problem rather than the solution, so that we're always focused on the customer's needs and not the technology, the specifics of the technology that we're building necessarily.
Yeah, and I think the point that you've raised is an excellent one, because it's what happens in the real life world when salespeople are dealing with the end customer, and then we're trying to communicate internally with the dev team. Because as we all know, the salespeople can often promise the world and tell them that our dev team are not only superhuman, but they will be able to fix everything and more. And then internally, it's a whoa, 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 whoa. What did you say there? So, if particularly when you're dealing with the large corporates, you have to look at the problem and have to understand, can you create a solution?
Yeah. When you are chasing sales and trying to get that money in and get that business, are there any tools that you use in order to help you out on a day-to-day basis with managing that?
Yeah, there are. So there's software tools called CRM systems that really every salesperson should be using in this day and age.
And what does CRM stand for?
It stands for Customer Relationship Management. Now, you could dumb it right down to a spreadsheet, and if you're starting off with a smaller product with a small number of customers, a spreadsheet's fine. You can have your drop downs, your red, amber, green status. You can see everything on the one page. It's not the worst thing in the world to be able to do, but you do have to put in a lot of manual edits. A CRM system is just a software tool that basically does everything for you, but it also gives you reminders, and it can link everything up. Probably the best software CRMs in the market would be Pipedrive, HubSpot, or Salesforce are the 3 most popular. I've used all 3. And they can be really good, because once you get up to the 10, 20, 30 clients, you have to chase these guys once a week usually to get a bit of traction. So you need reminders, you need all the information in the one spot. If I, as a salesperson, was to die or leave the company, you need to have the next person in to be able to hit the ground running, to keep the company alive, and to save 3 months of lost work trying to recover all the missing information. So it's really powerful. And to get one user a month, it comes in at around 25, 30 pounds a month. So yeah, really useful. But there's also another tool that I use for once you get a little bit deeper, and this is more sort of for the larger B2B companies. So can you see this that says mutual agreed action plan?
I can indeed, yeah.
So when you're selling to large businesses, it's very important to have an action plan of how you're going to progress through a sale. It's not just a case of, okay, yeah, let's give you your £25 a month and let's go from there. Quite often you have to have several meetings with different exec boards. You have to do demonstrations, maybe proof of concepts or trials, because if these large companies like what you're producing and creating, and they're going to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds or millions to bring in a product, they've got to be sure that it's exactly what they want. So if you have a mutually agreed action plan, what this does, it keeps everybody right. It means that your end customer has agreed to what the next actions are to make the sale happen, to get the product into their company. And, that will go right from the early introduction, right the way through to the, onboarding and the kickoff meetings, and then the support calls. And that will all be married up with the contracts. But something like this is quite a nice sort of snapshot for that one customer, which you agree with them in advance.
Excellent. And as much as the nerd and me would talk around theory and concepts all day, I think it's also really valuable to relate everything back to real world experiences. I wonder if you could tell us about a client that you recently sold for, how that played out, how those techniques fed into that success.
Yeah, sure. I was representing a large healthcare company recently, and sorry, I think there's a question coming in there from Rose. Emman, I don't know if you can pick them
No
up.
problem.
Hang on, is it in the chat? Is it? So yeah, a recent client. It was a private medical insurance company, one of the big four, that have millions of customers. They had different key people to bring our product into. They had a lot of different executive boards to get clearance on the product. And you just got to stay in with them and on with them on a weekly basis with your mutually agreed action plan. And you got to tick off in a timely fashion, deliver what they need when they need it, and then just try to always be available for them. Working with these big companies has a lot of big problems. But the best advice I could give anybody listening is to agree a map, get a mutually agreed action plan, and then take it from there. We got the monthly sales in, we got the 4-year contract signed up for millions of pounds, and everybody was very happy. And certainly, my bosses were very happy, as you can imagine.
So we've got some questions in the chat. So could you explain to us what the difference in approach would be in broad strokes when you're talking about B2B versus B2C? Are there fundamental differences in how you would tackle that kind of sales target?
Yeah, so quite simply, the marketing, which feeds into the sales, is probably the first and biggest difference. From a B2C, you market on the social platforms, you market one to many. From B2B, you got to market a lot more targeted and focused. And then you work with your sales team to ensure that the messaging is very consistent between your marketing and then your sales. And that's the biggest difference between B2B and B2C.
I guess if you're thinking about B2C, the consumer base is a very diverse range of people, typically, even if your product is targeted at a specific demographic, your likelihood is that your real world users are quite a spread of different types of people. Whereas B2B, you're singularly focused on one business, their needs, and it's their responsibility to think about the wider consumer pool that they have at that point.
Yeah, very much so. And when you're selling to B2B, you're often going in as perhaps a white labeled product, that nobody even knows what your product is. If, for example, you're selling software into Tesco, that software to the Tesco customer will have Tesco labeled all over it. So you've got to be very cognizant to that. Look, you're selling into Tesco and you're offering, their values and their needs. And that's a lot cheaper than the marketing to the B2C. That doesn't say that B2C cannot work with a small marketing budget. If you've got a disruptive product and you've got, a market that is ripe and ready for it, by all means go for it. So, I don't want to discount any B2C sellers that are on this call. There's absolutely a market. There's a huge market. 8 billion people nearly in the world are B2C markets. So,
And a really good question as well is it always one or the other? Are there instances where you can target both at the same time?
Very rarely, I would say. Very rarely. Most platforms, particularly technical platforms that you have, will be focused on selling into businesses with the end consumer at mind. Can you bubble it up? I'm trying to think of a live example, like a technical product platform that you could use. perhaps something like Dropbox, where you can go out and people can individually buy the Dropbox, but then Dropbox can represent from a corporate level, a large offering, and they'll have your corporate packages and then your consumer packages. So yeah, absolutely, it is able to do that.
Yep. And another great question thrown in is if you approach a business sort of having done your homework, believing that you understand what the problem or pain point might be for them, and your customer says, no, we don't have that problem. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, well, I've got a phrase that I learned from somebody that they say refuse to lose. So you can't often get yeses in every sales call. In fact, very rarely will you get the straight yes, but try to come away with something. Try to come away with something, whether it's, maybe you're not interested. Might somebody else in your company be interested in what we have to offer? No, okay, is now not the time? Might you have time next year? Might there be a realistic timeline in your roadmap that this could be a good fit? No, okay. Might you have any other colleagues or competitors that you think might be, interested in any of this? And so you could come away with something if you keep asking them. So I always like to come away with something and hope that not every call is lost. But you've got to be ready for that. And look, that's fine. You can't please everybody and can't be something to every person. So just move on.
Absolutely. I'm aware we're getting to the end of our time, Paul. If anyone on the call wants to find out more, get in touch with you, perhaps. Are there any channels for them to do so? And I guess it's worth sort of letting people know what we do as well and what we can offer in terms of support and guidance.
Sure, yeah. So we are in our last minute. So being respectful of time, if you need to get a hold of us, it's hello@vivolution.co.uk. That's the email address. Or you can grab us on LinkedIn. Just go to Vivolution and send a direct message to the company. We have 4 main services that we offer. As you can see on the screen, we have design-led development at the start. We then have software development, Emman, which is what you do. Then we have
Absolutely.
commercial playbook and sales, which is what I do. And we have an investment strategy, which we have other team members do. They can all link in and it can be modular. And if any of those services is a requirement for your company or it could be a good fit, please get a hold of us and we can scope out any sort of project that can be a good fit. We're very flexible in terms of our workings. We can work for weeks, months, and years on end, and we can scope out a platform or a product that can be fit for you.
Excellent. Any final thoughts or anything, Paul, that you want to give people before we wrap up and let everyone get back to their working day?
Yeah, no, just thank you everybody for coming on board. I hope you had got some nuggets of information or gold that you may be able to take elsewhere. And if you have done, that's great. If you're looking for any sales support or advice, please give me a call anytime.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today, Paul, and thank you everyone that joined us on the call as well.
Thanks everyone. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.